divorce papers felt like ice in Simone's trembling hands as she sat in the sterile courthouse hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her dark skin. Her wedding ring, once a symbol of forever, now felt like a shackle she couldn't wait to remove. "You're broken, Simone. What kind of woman can't even give her husband children?" David's words from 3 hours ago still echoed in her ears like a death sentence. The man she'd loved for 8 years, the man she'd built dreams with, had just shattered her world with clinical precision. The fertility specialist's office had been their last stop before the lawyer's office. Dr. Martinez had delivered the news with professional sympathy. Severe endometriosis, damaged fallopian tubes, less than a 1% chance of natural conception. Simone had watched David's face transform from hope to disappointment to cold resignation in real time. "I want children, Simone. Real children. Not some adopted strangers." His voice had turned hard, unfamiliar. "I can't do this anymore. I won't waste any more years on someone who can't give me what I need." Now, sitting alone while David signed away their marriage like a business transaction, Simone felt the weight of failure crushing her chest. 29 years old and already labeled as defective goods. The other couples in the waiting area seemed to glow with possibility while she withered under the harsh reality of her broken body. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister Denise. "How did it go at the doctor's?" Simone's fingers hovered over the keyboard, unable to form the words that would make it real. Instead, she turned off her phone and walked into the courtroom where her marriage would officially die. The judge, an older black woman with kind eyes, processed their paperwork with efficient grace. When she looked at Simone, something flickered across her face, recognition of pain that ran deeper than legal proceedings. "Mrs. Thompson, do you understand the terms of this dissolution?" Judge Washington asked gently. Simone nodded, not trusting her voice. David had taken the house, the cars, most of their savings. He'd left her with enough money for a fresh start and a pile of medical bills from their failed fertility treatments. "And Mr. Thompson, you're certain this is what you want?" David straightened his tie, his blonde hair perfectly styled even for this moment of destruction. "Yes, Your Honor." Irreconcilable differences. Irreconcilable differences. As if her inability to carry children was a personality flaw instead of a medical condition. The gavel came down like thunder. Divorce granted. Simone walked out of that courthouse carrying nothing but her purse and a broken heart. The late afternoon sun felt too bright, too cheerful for the death of her dreams. She climbed into her old Honda, the car David had called suitable for a single woman, and sat in the parking lot as tears finally came. Her reflection in the rearview mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Her usually bright smile was gone, replaced by hollow cheeks and red-rimmed eyes. Her hair, normally styled with care, hung limp around her shoulders. She looked exactly like what David had called her, broken. The drive to her new apartment took her through the neighborhood where she and David had planned to raise their children. Past the elementary school where she'd imagined dropping off little ones with his blonde hair and her warm eyes. Past the park where she'd pictured teaching tiny hands to swing and slide. Now those dreams belonged to someone else. David had already moved on, probably already swiping through dating apps looking for a woman whose body could deliver what hers could not. Simone pulled into the parking lot of her new complex, a modest place in a transitional neighborhood. The apartment was small but clean, a fresh start that felt more like an ending. As she climbed the stairs to her second-floor unit, she heard the sounds of family life echoing from other apartments. Children laughing, mothers calling them to dinner, fathers coming home from work. The sounds that would never fill her home. Inside her empty apartment, Simone sank to the floor and finally let herself break completely. The sobs came from somewhere deep inside, the kind of crying that left her breathless and raw. She cried for the children she'd never carry, for the husband who'd abandoned her, for the future that had been ripped away. When her phone rang hours later, she saw Denise's name flashing. Her sister had been calling all evening, worried sick. Simone let it go to voicemail, unable to speak the words that would make her failure real to the people who loved her. Tomorrow she would have to tell her family. Tomorrow she would have to explain that David was gone, that her marriage was over, that her dreams of motherhood had died in a sterile medical office. Tomorrow she would have to figure out how to build a life from the ashes of everything she'd wanted. But tonight she would mourn. Tonight she would grieve for the woman she used to be before the word Barren became her identity. As midnight approached, Simone finally picked up her phone and listened to Denise's voicemail. "Sim, I don't know what happened today, but I love you. Whatever it is, we'll get through it together. You're not alone." Those words broke her heart all over again, because she'd never felt more alone in her life. 3 months later, Simone sat in the employee break room at Mercy General Hospital, staring at her reflection in the microwave door. The night shift as a medical billing clerk paid the bills but barely covered her rent and student loans. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights and endless overtime. Her coworker Janet, a middle-aged white woman with kind eyes, slid into the chair across from her. "Honey, you look like you haven't eaten in days." Simone managed a weak smile. "Just tired. Double shifts are catching up with me." "It's more than that." Janet's voice carried the authority of someone who'd raised 5 children and seen every kind of heartbreak. "You've been carrying the weight of the world since you started here. Want to talk about it?" The simple kindness almost broke Simone's carefully constructed walls. She'd been holding everything inside for months, afraid that speaking her pain would make it too real to bear. "My ex-husband divorced me because I can't have children," she whispered, the words feeling foreign in her mouth. It was the first time she'd said it out loud to anyone except her sister. Janet's face softened with understanding. "Oh, sweetheart. The doctors say my chances are practically zero. He said I was broken. Said he couldn't waste any more time on someone who couldn't give him what he needed." The words tumbled out now, months of suppressed anguish flooding the small break room. "That man is a fool," Janet said firmly. "Children come in all kinds of ways, and any man who can't see past biology to love the woman he married doesn't deserve you." Simone shook her head. "Easy to say when your body works the way it's supposed to. I'm damaged goods, Janet. What man is going to want a woman who can't give him a family? The right man. The one who loves you for who you are, not what you can produce." Janet reached across the table and squeezed Simone's hand. "But first, you need to love yourself again." The conversation was interrupted by Dr. Patricia Wells, the head of pediatrics, rushing past the break room window. Even through the glass, they could see the exhaustion on her face as she headed toward the NICU. "That woman works 18-hour days," Janet observed. "Been here 15 years and I've never seen her take a real vacation." Simone watched Dr. Wells disappear around the corner, wondering what drove someone to pour themselves so completely into their work. Maybe it was the same thing driving her to volunteer for every overtime shift. The desperate need to feel useful when everything else felt pointless. Her phone buzzed with a text from Denise. "Mom's asking when you're coming for Sunday dinner. You can't avoid us forever." Simone turned off her phone without responding. The thought of sitting around her family's table, listening to updates about her cousin's pregnancies and her brother's little league games, felt unbearable. Every gathering was a reminder of what she couldn't contribute to the family legacy. Back at her desk, Simone lost herself in the mind-numbing routine of processing insurance claims. Numbers and codes filled her screen, each file representing someone else's medical journey. Broken bones that would heal, illnesses that would respond to treatment, conditions that had solutions. Not like hers. Around 3 a.m., when the hospital quieted to its overnight hum, Simone found herself walking past the maternity ward. She'd made this pilgrimage dozens of times over the past months, drawn to the place where miracles happened daily. Through the nursery window, she could see rows of tiny bassinets, each holding someone's answered prayer. A young black couple stood at the window, the woman still in a hospital gown, both of them glowing with new parent exhaustion and joy. The man had his arm around his wife as they pointed at their baby, already making plans and promises to the tiny person who just entered their world. Simone pressed her hand against the glass, watching the scene that would never be hers. The couple noticed her standing there and smiled, the universal gesture of new parents eager to share their happiness. She smiled back, her heart breaking a little more at their kindness. "First baby?" the woman asked, assuming Simone was waiting for her own delivery. "Oh no, Simone stumbled over the words, unable to explain that she was just a broken woman drawn to other people's joy like a moth to flame. "I work here. Just checking on things." The lie felt necessary, kinder than the truth that would dim their celebration. Walking back to her department, Simone passed the children's ward where Dr. Wells was finishing her rounds. Through an open door, she could hear the doctor reading a bedtime story to a patient, her voice gentle despite the exhaustion Simone knew she was carrying. Something stirred in Simone's chest, a flicker of curiosity about the woman who dedicated her life to other people's children. What drove someone to choose that path? What did fulfillment look like when it didn't include the traditional markers of women's success? The questions followed her home as dawn broke over the city. In her small apartment, surrounded by the silence of a life lived alone, Simone wondered if there might be other ways to matter in the world. Other ways to nurture and love and build something meaningful from the pieces of her shattered dreams. But that wondering felt dangerous, like hope in disguise. And hope, she'd learned, was the cruelest emotion of all. 6 months after her divorce, Simone finally forced herself to attend her cousin Tasha's baby shower. The pastel decorations and excited chatter felt like sandpaper against her raw nerves, but family obligations couldn't be avoided forever. Simone. Tasha wadded over, 8 months pregnant and glowing with the kind of joy that used to come so naturally to gatherings like this. "I'm so glad you made it. We've missed you at everything lately." Simone pasted on her practiced smile and held up the gift bag containing a hand-knitted blanket she'd spent weeks making. "Wouldn't miss it. You look beautiful." The compliment was genuine. Tasha did look beautiful, round and radiant in the way that made pregnancy seem like the most natural thing in the world. Everything Simone's body had refused to do, Tasha was doing effortlessly. The afternoon stretched endlessly through games about baby food flavors and measuring Tasha's belly with yarn. Simone found herself in the kitchen, helping Aunt Ruby arrange fruit on a platter and grateful for any task that kept her hands busy. "How you holding up, baby girl?" Aunt Ruby's voice carried the weight of family wisdom. She was the keeper of everyone's secrets, the woman who somehow knew about troubles before they were spoken. "I'm fine, Aunt Ruby. Just busy with work." Ruby's skeptical hum said more than words. "Busy is good, but healing takes time too. Don't rush yourself through the hard parts." Before Simone could respond, excited voices from the living room called for everyone to watch Tasha open gifts. They joined the circle of women, 3 generations gathered to celebrate new life. Simone watched her cousin unwrap tiny clothes and soft toys, each item representing preparation for a future that was certain and planned. When Tasha opened Simone's blanket, the room went quiet with appreciation. The intricate pattern had taken months to complete, each stitch a meditation on love and loss. "Simone, this is gorgeous," Tasha breathed, holding the blanket against her belly. "Did you make this?" "It's nothing fancy. Just something to keep the baby warm." "It's everything." Tasha's eyes filled with tears. "This is the most beautiful gift here. My baby is going to be wrapped in so much love." The words hit Simone like a physical blow. She excused herself to the bathroom, needing a moment to compose herself. In the mirror, she saw the same hollow-eyed woman she'd been looking at for months, but something was different. The act of creating something beautiful for someone else's child had awakened a part of her she'd thought was dead. Driving home later, Simone found herself taking a detour through downtown. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the streets as she passed coffee shops and boutiques, people walking dogs and pushing strollers, the everyday rhythm of lives being lived. At a red light, she noticed a small storefront with a sign that read, "New Horizons Children's Center." Through the window, she could see colorful murals and tiny chairs, the unmistakable setup of a daycare or preschool. Without thinking, she pulled into the parking lot. The center was closed for the weekend, but posted hours showed they opened early for working parents. A help wanted sign in the window advertised for assistant teachers, full-time positions with benefits. Simone found herself reading the requirements. Early childhood education credits preferred but not required, background check, references. "Can I help you?" Simone turned to find an older black woman approaching from the building's side entrance. She was petite but carried herself with the confidence of someone used to managing chaos with grace. "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just looking at your sign. I didn't mean to lurk around your building." The woman smiled warmly. "No lurking involved. I'm Gloria Henderson, Director of New Horizons. You interested in the position?" Something about Gloria's direct warmth made Simone feel safe enough to be honest. "I don't know. I've never worked with children professionally. I just saw your sign and stopped. Sometimes that's how the best opportunities start." "What do you do now?" "Medical billing at Mercy General. Night shift." Gloria nodded thoughtfully. "Healthcare experience is valuable. Shows you can handle responsibility and work under pressure. What made you stop today?" Simone hesitated, unsure how to explain the complex web of grief and longing that had led her to this parking lot. "I've been going through some changes lately. Trying to figure out what comes next." "Well, if you're serious about exploring this, why don't you come by Monday morning around 7? You can see what we do here, meet some of the kids. No pressure, just a chance to see if it feels right." The offer surprised Simone. "You don't even know me. I know you stopped to read our sign on a Saturday afternoon. I know you're asking thoughtful questions instead of just asking about salary. And I know something brought you here today." Gloria pulled a business card from her pocket. "Sometimes we need to trust our instincts." Driving home with Gloria's card on her passenger seat, Simone felt something she hadn't experienced in months. curiosity about tomorrow. The feeling was fragile, easily crushed by the voice in her head that reminded her of all the ways she'd already failed. But it was there, a tiny spark in the darkness that had become her normal. That night, she found herself researching early childhood development online, reading about the importance of nurturing relationships in young children's lives. Article after article emphasized that children needed consistent, caring adults who could provide stability and emotional support. Maybe, Simone thought as she closed her laptop, there were different ways to matter in a child's life. Maybe being unable to create life didn't mean she was unable to nurture it. The thought felt revolutionary and terrifying in equal measure. Monday morning at New Horizons felt like stepping into controlled chaos. Simone arrived at 6:45 a.m. to find Gloria already unlocking classrooms while early drop-off parents rushed in with sleepy toddlers and overstuffed diaper bags. Perfect timing, Gloria called out, balancing a coffee cup and a stack of activity sheets. Ready for the morning rush? Before Simone could answer, a small boy with chocolate skin and worried eyes clung to his father's leg, tears threatening as Daddy prepared to leave for work. Hey there, Jerome. Gloria knelt to the child's level, her voice gentle but confident. Remember what we talked about? Daddy always comes back after snack time. She looked up at the father, a young man who clearly hated this daily struggle as much as his son did. Marcus, try the quick goodbye we practiced. The longer goodbyes make it harder on both of you. Simone watched Gloria navigate the delicate balance of supporting both child and parent, making the transition easier for everyone involved. Within minutes, Jerome was distracted by the promise of building blocks, and Marcus was able to leave for work without the guilt that usually followed him out the door. Separation anxiety, Gloria explained quietly to Simone as they watched Jerome settle into play. His mom deployed overseas 6 months ago. Dad's doing his best as a single parent, but mornings are tough. The morning continued with a parade of small people and big emotions. Simone found herself naturally gravitating toward the children who seemed to need extra attention. The shy girl who hid behind her grandmother's skirts, the energetic boy who bounced off walls until given a specific task to focus on, the quiet child who watched everything but participated in nothing. You have good instincts, observed Rosa Martinez, one of the lead teachers, as Simone helped a frustrated preschooler work through a difficult puzzle. Some people are naturals with kids, others have to learn it. You're definitely a natural. By lunchtime, Simone had been unofficially adopted by several children who seemed to sense her genuine interest in their small but important concerns. 4-year-old Destiny appointed herself as Simone's tour guide, explaining the classroom rules and introducing her to each learning center with the seriousness of a diplomat. This is where we do art, and this is where we read stories, and this is where we keep the good crayons that don't break, Destiny explained, her tiny hand tucked trustingly in Simone's. Do you like to color? I love to color. What's your favorite thing to draw? Families. I draw my mama and my baby brother and my grandmama who takes care of us when mama works late. Destiny's matter-of-fact description of her household painted a picture of a loving but stretched family making it work however they could. During lunch, Gloria found Simone helping the children navigate their meal choices and settle disputes over who got which color cup with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed their company. So, what do you think so far? Gloria asked, settling into a child-sized chair that looked comically small under her adult frame. It's... Simone paused, searching for words to describe the feeling of being useful in a way she'd never experienced. It's beautiful and exhausting and overwhelming and perfect all at the same time. Gloria laughed. That's exactly what it is. Every single day. These children, they're so resilient. Jerome with his mom deployed, Destiny helping raise her baby brother, all of them just taking whatever life gives them and making it work. Children are remarkably adaptable, Gloria agreed. But they need consistent adults who believe in them and provide stability. That's what we do here. We're not just babysitting while parents work. We're helping shape the people these kids will become. The weight of that responsibility should have felt intimidating, but instead it felt like coming home. Simone spent the afternoon reading stories and mediating playground disputes and wiping tears and celebrating small victories like successful shoe tying and sharing toys without being asked. When the last child was picked up at 6 p.m., Simone helped Gloria lock up the building with the satisfied exhaustion of a day well spent. I'd like to offer you the position, Gloria said as they walked to their cars. Full-time benefits, 2 weeks paid vacation after a year. The pay isn't going to make you rich, but the work is meaningful. Simone felt tears prick her eyes, surprised by how much the offer meant to her. I haven't even given my notice at the hospital yet. Take your time to think about it. But Simone? Those children responded to you today in a way that tells me this is more than just a job for you. Sometimes we find our purpose in unexpected places. Driving home, Simone's mind raced with possibilities and fears in equal measure. The practical voice in her head reminded her that hospital work paid better and had more advancement opportunities. But the part of her that had been dead since David's cruel words was stirring to life, awakened by small hands and trusting eyes and the revolutionary idea that she could matter in ways she'd never imagined. That night, she called Denise for the first time since the divorce. "Simone. Oh my God, I've been so worried about you. How are you doing?" "I think," Simone said carefully, "I think I might be figuring out who I'm supposed to be." 3 months into her new career at New Horizons, Simone had found a rhythm she'd never experienced before. Her days started early and ended late, but every hour was filled with purpose that fed her soul in ways her hospital job never had. "Miss Simone, Miss Simone." Destiny ran across the playground, her braids bouncing as she rushed to share some earth-shattering preschooler news. "I lost my tooth. Look." The gap-toothed grin was infectious, and Simone found herself celebrating with the same enthusiasm as if it were her own child's milestone. These moments had become her new normal. Tiny victories that felt enormous, small arms wrapping around her waist in spontaneous hugs, the absolute trust that children gave to adults who showed up consistently for them. "That's so exciting. Did the tooth fairy visit you last night?" "She brought me $2 whole," Destiny announced proudly. "Mama said that's because I was brave when it hurt a little bit." Watching Destiny skip back to her friends, Simone marveled at how much her life had changed. The woman who'd once measured her worth by her ability to conceive had found fulfillment in nurturing children who weren't biologically hers but who had claimed pieces of her heart nonetheless. Gloria approached with the satisfied smile of someone watching a plan come together. "The Henderson Foundation called today. They want to do a feature story about our program for their newsletter. I told them you'd be perfect to interview about our approach to supporting children from single-parent homes." "Me? I've only been here a few months. Sometimes fresh eyes see things the rest of us miss. Besides, you've developed incredible relationships with our kids. Parents specifically request you for difficult transitions." It was true. Somehow Simone had become the teacher parents called when their children were struggling with big emotions or difficult changes. She had an intuitive understanding of what it felt like to have your world turned upside down, and that empathy translated into patience with children who were processing their own upheavals. "Jerome's dad wants to talk to you after pickup today," Gloria mentioned. Something about how much progress Jerome's made with his separation anxiety. Marcus Williams had become a familiar face over the past months, a young father doing his best to navigate single parenthood while his wife served in Afghanistan. He was always polite but distant, the kind of man carrying too much responsibility to have energy for small talk. That afternoon, he approached Simone with Jerome's hand in his and an uncharacteristic nervousness in his demeanor. "Miss Thompson, I wanted to thank you for everything you've done for Jerome. The morning drop-offs used to be a nightmare for both of us, and now he actually looks forward to coming here." Jerome nodded enthusiastically. "Miss Simone taught me that feelings are okay but hitting isn't okay when I'm mad about Mama being gone." The simple statement showed the emotional growth that had taken months to achieve. Jerome had learned to articulate his feelings instead of acting out, a skill that would serve him far beyond preschool. "He's worked really hard," Simone replied, ruffling Jerome's hair affectionately. "It takes courage to talk about feelings that hurt." Marcus's smile was grateful but tired. "I don't know how you do it. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water, and you make it look so natural. Trust me, I'm figuring it out as I go too." But Jerome makes it easy. He's got such a good heart. After they left, Gloria found Simone cleaning up the art station with the methodical care that had become her signature. "You know, when I first offered you this job, I thought you might be running from something. Now I can see you were running towards something. You just didn't know it yet." Simone paused in her wiping down of paint-covered tables. "I was broken when I got here. My ex-husband made sure I knew I was defective because I couldn't have children. And now I realize he was wrong about what makes a woman valuable. I may not be able to give birth, but I can love children. I can help them grow and learn and feel safe in the world. That has to count for something." Gloria's smile held the warmth of someone who'd watched many women discover their own strength. "It counts for everything, honey. Every single day, you're proof that families come in all different shapes." That evening, as Simone prepared lessons for the next day, her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Simone? This is Dr. Patricia Wells from Mercy General. I know this is unusual, but I got your number from Janet in billing. Simone's heart skipped, wondering if there was some problem with her departure from the hospital. Dr. Wells, how can I help you? I heard you're working with children now and I have a proposition for you. The pediatric ward is starting a program to help children cope with medical procedures and extended hospital stays. We need someone who understands child development but also has medical knowledge. Janet thought you might be perfect. The opportunity was unexpected and intriguing. What would it involve? Developing activities and therapeutic play sessions for our young patients. Teaching coping skills, providing emotional support during treatment. It would be part-time evenings and weekends, but it might be a way to combine your hospital experience with your new passion. Simone felt the familiar flutter of possibility, the same feeling that had led her to Gloria's parking lot months earlier. I'd be interested in learning more. Wonderful. Can you come in this Friday afternoon? I'd like to show you what we're envisioning. After hanging up, Simone stared out her apartment window at the city lights below. 6 months ago, she'd been a broken woman convinced her life was over. Now she was being offered opportunities she never could have imagined, chances to make a difference in ways that honored both her past experience and her newfound calling. Maybe, she thought, some endings were actually beginnings in disguise. The consultation at Mercy General had gone better than Simone could have hoped. Dr. Wells had offered her a position as a pediatric child life specialist, working part-time to complement her full-time role at New Horizons. The opportunity to help children navigate medical procedures while maintaining her classroom work felt like the perfect blend of her skills and passions. Driving home from the meeting, Simone decided to stop at Riverside Mall to pick up some supplies for a craft project with her preschoolers. The Saturday afternoon crowd was typical for the weekend. Families with strollers, teenagers in groups, couples window shopping. She was comparing prices on construction paper in the craft store when she heard a voice that made her blood freeze. Daddy, can we go to the toy store next? Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you want. Simone's hands went numb around the package she was holding. That voice, the one responding to the child with such warmth and patience, belonged to David. Her ex-husband was somewhere in this store, apparently with a child who called him Daddy. Her first instinct was to hide, to avoid the confrontation that would surely destroy the fragile peace she'd built over the past year. But curiosity and a twisted sense of closure made her peer around the aisle display. David stood near the sticker section, looking exactly the same except for the softness in his expression that she'd never seen during their marriage. Next to him stood a woman about Simone's age, blonde and petite, with the kind of natural beauty that needed no makeup. And surrounding them were 4 identical little girls, maybe 3 years old, all with David's blue eyes and their mother's golden hair. Quadruplets. David, who had called her broken for being unable to conceive, was now the father of quadruplets. Simone's legs went weak as the cruel irony hit her full force. The man who had destroyed her for her inability to have children was now raising 4 children with someone else. The woman who had replaced her had given him exactly what he claimed to want in abundance. Girls, stay close to mommy while daddy picks out your stickers, the woman said in a voice that carried the patient exhaustion of someone managing multiple toddlers in public. One of the little girls wandered closer to where Simone was hiding, drawn by the bright colors of the paper display. She had David's stubborn chin and an expression of fierce concentration as she examined her options. I like the purple ones, mommy, she announced. That's lovely, Sophia. Let daddy know which ones you want. Simone watched this perfect family scene play out 20 feet away, her heart breaking all over again. This was what David had left her to find. This was what he'd been so certain she could never give him. She tried to back away quietly to escape before being noticed, but her shaking hands knocked over a display of markers. The clattering sound drew everyone's attention, including David's. Their eyes met across the aisle, and Simone watched his face cycle through shock, recognition, and something that might have been guilt. For a moment, neither of them moved. David? Is everything okay? His wife looked between them, sensing tension but not understanding its source. It's Simone, my ex-wife. The introduction hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Simone saw the woman's expression shift as she processed this information, probably remembering whatever version of their divorce story David had told her. Oh. The single word carried volumes. I'm Michelle. Simone managed to find her voice. Congratulations on your beautiful family. The words came out steadier than she felt, years of practice at hiding her pain finally serving a purpose. She could see David struggling with what to say, the man who had been so certain about her inadequacy now faced with the evidence of his cruelty. Simone, he started, then stopped, apparently realizing there were no words that could undo the damage he'd done. One of the quadruplets tugged on Michelle's hand. "Mommy, I have to go potty." "Of course, sweetheart." Michelle looked relieved for the excuse to extract her family from this uncomfortable situation. "David, why don't you get the stickers while I take the girls to the restroom?" As Michelle herded 4 little girls toward the front of the store, David took a step closer to Simone. Up close, she could see that fatherhood had changed him. He looked tired but content, the sharp edges of his personality softened by the demands of caring for 4 small children. "Simone, I owe you an apology." "Do you?" Her voice was cooler than she felt. "For what part? The divorce or the way you did it?" He had the grace to look ashamed. "For all of it. The things I said, the way I made you feel like it was your fault. I was cruel and I knew it even then. You called me broken. You made me believe I was worthless because my body couldn't do what you wanted it to do. I know. And I've regretted those words every day since." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "You weren't broken, Simone. I was so focused on what I thought I wanted that I couldn't see what I had." The apology should have felt satisfying, but instead it just felt hollow. Too little, too late, delivered in a craft store while his new family waited in the bathroom. "4 children at once must keep you busy," Simone said, changing the subject before his words could crack her carefully maintained composure. "It's a lot. Michelle had fertility treatments after we got married. We were hoping for 1, maybe 2. The quadruplets were a shock." He paused, seeming to realize how his words might sound. "A blessing, I mean. They're a blessing." "I'm sure they are." Simone picked up her construction paper, suddenly desperate to end this encounter. "I should go. Your family is waiting." "Simone, wait." David's voice carried a desperation that stopped her. "I heard you're working with children now. I'm glad. You always would have been a wonderful mother." The words hit her like a physical blow. The man who had convinced her she was unfit to be around children was now acknowledging what she'd spent months learning about herself. "I am a wonderful mother," she said quietly. "Just not in the way you thought mattered." Before he could respond, Michelle returned with the 4 little girls in tow, each of them chattering about their bathroom adventure with the intensity that only preschoolers could bring to mundane experiences. "Daddy, did you get our stickers?" Sophia demanded, apparently the spokesperson for the group. David looked at Simone one more time, his expression filled with regret and something that might have been longing for a different past. "Take care of yourself, Simone." "I am," she replied simply, and for the first time since their divorce she meant it. The encounter at the mall haunted Simone for weeks. Seeing David with his perfect family had reopened wounds she thought had healed, forcing her to confront the complicated tangle of anger, grief, and unexpected relief that his apology had stirred up. At New Horizons, she threw herself into her work with renewed intensity, finding solace in the predictable rhythms of preschooler needs. But Gloria noticed the change in her energy, the way she held herself more carefully, as if protecting something fragile inside. "You've been different since last weekend," Gloria observed during their weekly planning meeting. "Want to talk about it?" Simone stared at the lesson plans spread across the table, colorful activities designed to help 4-year-olds learn about friendship and sharing. "I ran into my ex-husband at the mall. He has quadruplets now with his new wife." Ouch. Gloria's simple response carried more understanding than a dozen platitudes would have. "He apologized. Said I wasn't broken, that he was wrong about everything." Simone's voice was flat, emotionless. "But his apology doesn't give me back the year I spent believing I was worthless. It doesn't undo the damage he did to my sense of self." "No, it doesn't. But maybe it gives you permission to let go of carrying his judgment around like a weight." Before Simone could respond, Jerome burst through the classroom door with the dramatic flair that had become his signature since his confidence had grown. "Miss Simone, Daddy said Mama's coming home next month." His joy was infectious, the kind of pure happiness that could light up a room. "That's wonderful news, Jerome. You must be so excited." "I am. But also scared because I can't remember what she looks like very good anymore." The admission was made with the brutal honesty of childhood, the ability to hold joy and fear in the same breath. Simone knelt to his level, her own troubles temporarily forgotten in the face of his need. "That's okay to feel scared. It's been a long time since you've seen Mama. But you know what? Love doesn't forget, even when our minds get fuzzy about details." "Really? Really? And Daddy has pictures, right? You can look at them together and remember all the things you love about Mama before she gets home." Jerome nodded solemnly, processing this advice with the seriousness he brought to all emotional conversations. Then, with the swift attention shifts of childhood, he was off to tell Destiny about his mother's return. "You're good at that," Gloria observed. "Helping children navigate complex feelings. I've had a lot of practice with complex feelings lately." That afternoon, Simone started her first shift in the pediatric ward at Mercy General. The children's hospital section was a world away from the bright, cheerful chaos of New Horizons. Here, the children were dealing with serious medical conditions, lengthy treatments, and the fear that came with being sick in a place that smelled like antiseptic and uncertainty. Dr. Wells introduced her to the team and showed her the family room where she'd be working most evenings and weekends. The space was designed to feel more like home than hospital, with comfortable furniture, art supplies, and a play area that could accommodate children of different ages and mobility levels. "Your first client is Emma Rodriguez," Dr. Wells explained, pulling up a file on her tablet. 7 years old, leukemia patient, been in treatment for 6 months. She's struggling with the isolation that comes with her compromised immune system. Her parents are wonderful, but they're exhausted and scared. Simone reviewed Emma's information, noting the treatment schedule and the list of procedures she'd be facing in the coming weeks. "What's my role with her exactly?" "Help her process her feelings about being sick, teach her coping strategies for medical procedures, and give her parents some support in talking to her about what she's going through. Essentially, be the stable adult who can handle her big emotions without falling apart." The description hit closer to home than Dr. Wells probably realized. Simone had become an expert at being the stable one, the person who could hold space for other people's feelings while carefully managing her own. Emma was curled up in the hospital bed when Simone knocked on her door, a small girl with wise eyes and a Hello Kitty scarf covering her bald head. Her mother sat beside the bed, both of them looking up expectantly when Simone entered. "Hi Emma, I'm Miss Simone. Dr. Wells thought you and I might like to spend some time together." "Are you another doctor?" Emma's voice was suspicious, the wariness of a child who'd been poked and prodded by too many medical professionals. "Nope, no medical stuff. I just like talking to kids and doing fun activities. I brought some art supplies if you're interested." Something in Simone's tone must have passed Emma's internal test, because her expression shifted from suspicious to curious. "What kind of art supplies?" For the next hour, Simone watched Emma create an elaborate drawing of her family, complete with stick figure representations of her parents, her baby brother, and her dog. The drawing was cheerful and colorful, the kind of art that spoke to resilience in the face of circumstances no 7-year-old should have to endure. "Tell me about your picture," Simone encouraged. "That's Mama and Daddy, and that's my baby brother Carlos who's too little to visit me here, and that's our dog Rocco who keeps my bed warm while I'm gone." Emma pointed to each figure with the pride of an artist explaining her masterpiece. "Your family looks very loving." "They are, but they're also very worried all the time now. Mama cries when she thinks I can't see her, and Daddy gets really quiet and sad." Emma's matter-of-fact delivery of this observation showed the emotional intelligence that serious illness often forced on children too young to carry such awareness. "That must be hard to watch." "Yeah. I wish I could make them not scared anymore, but I don't know how." The conversation continued as Emma worked on her art, sharing the complex feelings that came with being the center of everyone's fear and concern. Simone found herself drawn into the child's perspective, remembering what it felt like to be the source of disappointment and worry for people who loved her. When the session ended, Emma's mother walked Simone to the elevator with tears in her eyes. "I haven't seen her talk about her feelings like that in months," Maria Rodriguez said. "She's been so focused on taking care of everyone else's emotions that she stopped expressing her own." Children are often more aware of family dynamics than adults realize. Emma's carrying a lot of responsibility for a 7-year-old. How do we help her with that? Simone thought of her own journey from feeling like a burden to finding her purpose. By showing her that love doesn't disappear when things get difficult. And by letting her be a child instead of the family caretaker. Driving home that night, Simone realized something had shifted inside her during those hours with Emma. The little girl's courage in facing uncertainty, her instinct to protect the adults who loved her, her determination to find joy even in difficult circumstances, had awakened something in Simone that she'd thought David's cruelty had killed forever. She wasn't broken. She never had been. She was a woman who'd survived devastating loss and found new ways to love and be loved. The children in her life, from Destiny's gap-toothed grins to Jerome's morning hugs to Emma's artistic expressions of hope, had taught her that families came in all shapes and sizes. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to believe that her story wasn't over yet. 3 months into her dual role as preschool teacher and pediatric child life specialist, Simone had found a rhythm that fed her soul in ways she'd never imagined possible. Her days were full of children's voices, their laughter and tears and endless questions creating a soundtrack that felt like home. On a particularly busy Thursday afternoon at New Horizons, she was helping Destiny with a stubborn shoelace when Gloria approached with an expression that meant big news. "I just got off the phone with the Henderson Foundation," Gloria announced, her excitement barely contained. "They want to feature our program in their annual fundraising gala. And they specifically requested that you be the speaker who represents our teaching staff." Simone's hand stilled on Destiny's shoe. "Me? But I've only been here 8 months. Sometimes the newest eyes see the clearest truth. Besides, your story, your journey to working with children, it represents exactly what our program is about. Second chances, finding purpose, building families in unexpected ways." The idea of speaking to a room full of donors and community leaders about her personal journey felt terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. A year ago, she'd been too broken to answer her sister's phone calls. Now she was being asked to represent something bigger than herself. "I don't know, Gloria. What would I even say?" "You tell them about the children who've changed your life. About how love and family don't always look the way we expect them to. About the difference that stable, caring adults can make in children's lives." Gloria's voice carried the conviction of someone who'd seen transformation happen countless times. "You tell them your truth." That evening at Mercy General, Simone found herself thinking about Gloria's request while she worked with Emma Rodriguez. The 7-year-old had made incredible progress over the past months, learning to articulate her fears and hopes with a maturity that amazed the medical team. "Miss Simone, can I tell you a secret?" Emma whispered during their art session, glancing around as if state secrets were about to be revealed. "Of course, sweetheart. I think my mama and daddy are happier now than they were before I got sick." The statement was so unexpected that Simone paused in her own drawing. "What makes you think that?" "Before, they were always rushing around, working all the time, worried about money and stuff. Now they sit with me and we talk about important things and they tell me stories about when they were little." Emma's face was thoughtful as she worked on what appeared to be a family portrait. "Being sick is terrible, but some of the other parts are good." The wisdom in those words hit Simone like a revelation. Emma had learned something that many adults never figured out, that crisis could strip away the non-essential and reveal what really mattered. That love often grew stronger when tested by difficulty. "You're very wise, Emma. My mama says hard things make us stronger, but only if we don't let them make us mean." That night, Simone sat in her apartment working on the speech she'd decided to give at the Henderson Foundation Gala. Writing about her journey from broken divorcee to fulfilled educator felt like excavating pieces of herself she'd buried for survival. Her phone rang just as she was struggling with how to explain the transformation without making it sound simple or easy. Denise's name flashed on the screen and for once, Simone answered on the first ring. "Hey sis, how's your evening?" "Good. Actually really good. I'm working on a speech I'm giving next month about my work with children." "Simone, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. A year ago you couldn't even talk about kids without crying, and now you're giving speeches about working with them?" The observation made Simone pause. Her sister was right. The woman who'd been too devastated to attend baby showers was now speaking publicly about child development and the importance of nurturing relationships. "It's funny how life works out sometimes," Simone mused. "I thought David leaving me meant my life was over. Turns out it was just beginning." "Have you heard from him lately?" Simone told Denise about the encounter at the mall, the apology that had come too late to heal but just in time to release. "Seeing him with those 4 little girls was like closure I didn't know I needed. He got what he wanted and I got what I needed, just not in the way either of us expected." "What did you need?" "To matter. To love and be loved. To feel useful in the world." Simone looked around her small apartment, filled now with children's artwork from school, thank you cards from hospital families, photos of smiling faces that had become her chosen family. "I thought I needed to be a biological mother to have those things. Turns out there are lots of ways to be essential in children's lives." They talked for another hour, catching up on family news and making plans for Simone to finally come to Sunday dinner, something she'd been avoiding for over a year. When she hung up, Simone returned to her speech with renewed clarity. The next morning at New Horizons brought the kind of chaos that had become her favorite type of challenge. Jerome's mother had finally returned from deployment, and he was processing the joy and adjustment of having her home. Destiny had a new baby sister and was working through complex feelings about sharing her mother's attention. 3 new children had enrolled, each bringing their own stories and needs. In the middle of managing morning meltdowns and celebrating small victories, Simone's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, this is Michelle Thompson, David's wife. Could we meet for coffee sometime? I have something I'd like to discuss with you." The message stopped Simone cold. She stared at her phone, wondering what David's wife could possibly want to discuss with her. Curiosity warred with caution as she considered how to respond. "Everything okay?" Gloria asked, noticing Simone's sudden stillness. "David's wife wants to meet with me." Gloria raised an eyebrow. "That's interesting. Any idea why?" "None whatsoever. Part of me is curious, and part of me thinks meeting with her is asking for trouble." "What does your gut tell you?" Simone considered the question, listening to the instincts that had guided her through the past year of rebuilding her life. That whatever she wants to say, I'm strong enough to hear it now. That afternoon she texted Michelle back, "I'd be willing to meet. When did you have in mind?" The response came quickly. "Saturday morning? There's a coffee shop near the mall where we met. I know this is strange, but I think we should talk." As Simone confirmed the meeting, she wondered what conversation awaited her with the woman who'd gotten everything Simone had once wanted. But for the first time since her divorce, she wasn't afraid to find out. Saturday morning found Simone sitting in Café Luna 15 minutes early, nursing a latte and trying to calm the nervous energy that had kept her awake most of the night. She'd chosen a table near the window where she could watch the parking lot, unsure what to expect from this meeting with Michelle. When David's wife walked through the door, Simone was struck again by how different she looked from their awkward encounter at the mall. Without 4 toddlers in tow, Michelle appeared younger, more relaxed, though there were dark circles under her eyes that spoke to the exhaustion of raising quadruplets. "Simone? Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me." Michelle's smile seemed genuine as she approached the table. "I wasn't sure you'd want to after everything. I'll admit I'm curious about what you wanted to discuss." Michelle ordered her coffee before settling into the chair across from Simone, her hands wrapped around her mug as if drawing comfort from its warmth. "I wanted to apologize for David. For the way he treated you and for what he told me about your marriage." The directness of the statement caught Simone off guard. "What did he tell you? That you couldn't have children and that's why you divorced?" He made it sound like it was mutual, like you both realized you wanted different things. Michelle's voice carried a thread of anger. "It wasn't until I saw your face at the mall that I realized there was more to the story." Simone studied Michelle's expression, seeing genuine regret and something that looked like recognition. "What made you realize that?" "The way you looked when you saw our girls. It wasn't jealousy or bitterness. It was grief. The look of someone who'd lost something precious, not someone who'd made a practical decision about incompatibility." The observation was more perceptive than Simone had expected. "Did you ask David about it?" Michelle's laugh was bitter. "I did. It took weeks of pressing, but he finally told me the truth. About the things he said to you, about how he made you feel like you were broken." Her eyes filled with tears. "I was horrified. That's not the man I thought I married. People show different sides of themselves to different people. Maybe. Or maybe the pressure of infertility brought out the worst in him." Michelle paused, seeming to gather her courage for something difficult. "Simone, I need to tell you something about our girls." A chill ran down Simone's spine at the change in Michelle's tone. "Okay. They're not David's biological children." The words hung in the air between them like a bombshell waiting to explode. Simone felt her world tilt as she processed the implications of what Michelle had just revealed. "I don't understand." "The fertility treatments, the IVF that resulted in the quadruplets. We used donor eggs and donor sperm. David is sterile. He was the one with the fertility problem in your marriage, not you." Simone's coffee mug slipped from her numb fingers, clattering against the table and spilling brown liquid across the surface. She barely noticed as Michelle reached for napkins to clean up the mess. "He was sterile," Simone repeated, her voice hollow. "And he let me believe that you were the problem." "Yes." Michelle's voice was thick with shame. "We found out about his condition during our fertility workup. The doctor said it was something that had likely been present for years, possibly his entire adult life." The betrayal cut deeper than anything David had done during their marriage. He had known. He had sat in doctors' offices and watched Simone blame herself for their inability to conceive, had watched her undergo painful tests and procedures, had let her believe she was defective when the problem was his all along. "Why didn't he tell me?" Simone whispered, though she already knew the answer. "Because it was easier to blame you than face his own inadequacy. Because he's a coward who couldn't handle being the one with the problem." Michelle's anger on Simone's behalf was palpable. "When we decided to use donors, I insisted we tell people the truth about the girls not being biological. David wanted to pretend they were naturally conceived. Even now he's living a lie. Simone sat in stunned silence as the full scope of David's deception sank in. Not only had he cruelly blamed her for their childlessness, but he'd done so while knowing she was innocent of the very thing he'd condemned her for. Why are you telling me this? Simone finally asked. Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I couldn't live with being part of his lie anymore. Michelle leaned forward, her expression intense. And because I needed you to know that what he said about you being broken was a projection of his own shame. Does he know you're here? No. He'd be furious if he found out. But I don't care anymore. Some things matter more than keeping a coward comfortable with his lies. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the revelation settling between them. Simone felt as though she was viewing her entire marriage through a new lens, seeing David's cruelty not as honest disappointment but as deliberate misdirection designed to protect his ego at the expense of her self-worth. I'm so sorry, Simone. Not just for what David did, but for being the woman who got the family you wanted, even if it didn't happen the way people think it did. Simone looked at Michelle with new eyes, seeing her not as the woman who'd replaced her but as another victim of David's selfishness. You don't owe me an apology for having children. That's not how any of this works. Maybe not. But I needed to give you the truth he stole from you. Thank you for that. It changes everything and nothing at the same time. Michelle tilted her head questioningly. It changes how I understand what happened to our marriage, but it doesn't change who I've become since then. I've built a life I love, found purpose I never knew was possible. The truth about David doesn't take that away. I heard you work with children now. David mentioned it at the mall. Simone smiled, the first genuine expression she'd managed since Michelle's revelation. I do. Preschoolers and children in the hospital. It turns out there are many ways to be important in children's lives. I'm glad you found that. You seem peaceful. Happy. I am. It took a long time to get here, but I am. They finished their coffee in more comfortable silence, two women connected by the same man's failures but no longer defined by them. When Michelle gathered her purse to leave, she paused at the table. For what it's worth, I think David realizes he made a terrible mistake in how he treated you. He may never admit it out loud, but I see it in how he looks at our girls sometimes. Like he's trying to figure out what he's supposed to feel about children who aren't genetically his. That sounds like his problem to solve. It is. And Simone? I hope you know that his inability to love you properly was never a reflection of your worth. Some people just aren't capable of the kind of love that lasts through difficulty. After Michelle left, Simone sat alone in the cafe for another hour, processing the conversation and its implications. The anger she expected to feel about David's deception was surprisingly absent. Instead, she felt something like pity for a man so trapped by his own insecurities that he destroyed a loving relationship rather than face his vulnerabilities. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jerome's father, Marcus. Jerome's been asking if you're coming to his mom's welcome home party tomorrow. Would you like to join us? The invitation felt like a perfect reminder of the family she'd chosen and who had chosen her in return. She texted back, I'd love to be there. What can I bring? As she walked to her car, Simone realized that Michelle's revelation had given her something unexpected. Complete freedom from the narrative that had defined her for so long. She was not broken. She had never been broken. She was a woman who'd survived betrayal and found her calling in loving other people's children. And for the first time since her divorce, that felt like more than enough. The Henderson Foundation Gala was held in the ballroom of the Grand Hotel downtown, filled with the kind of people whose checkbooks could transform children's lives with a single donation. Simone stood backstage in her best dress, a midnight blue creation that Denise had helped her pick out, trying to calm the butterflies that had taken up residence in her stomach. You're going to be wonderful, Gloria whispered, adjusting Simone's microphone. Just speak from your heart like you do with the children every day. Through the gap in the curtains, Simone could see the audience. Doctors and lawyers, business owners and philanthropists, all gathered to support programs that served vulnerable children. Somewhere in the crowd were families from New Horizons and Mercy General, people whose lives had intersected with hers in meaningful ways over the past year. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Simone Thompson, lead teacher at New Horizons Children's Center and pediatric child life specialist at Mercy General Hospital. The applause carried her onto the stage, where a podium stood bathed in warm light. Looking out at the sea of faces, Simone found herself thinking of all the children who had brought her to this moment. Destiny with her gap-toothed grin, Jerome with his morning hugs, Emma with her wise observations about love and strength. A year and a half ago, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, I thought my life was over. I sat in a divorce lawyer's office while my husband explained to a judge that our marriage had failed because I was broken. Because my body couldn't give him the children he wanted. A hush fell over the room as she continued. I believed him. For months, I carried the weight of that judgment, convinced that my inability to conceive made me worthless as a woman. I avoided family gatherings, stopped answering friends' calls, and worked overnight shifts at a job that kept me away from anything that reminded me of my failure. Simone paused, finding Gloria's encouraging face in the audience. But broken things, I've learned, sometimes heal in unexpected ways. My path to working with children didn't start with a noble calling or a childhood dream. It started with desperation and a help-wanted sign in a daycare window. She told them about her first day at New Horizons, about Destiny's tour of the classroom and Jerome's separation anxiety, about learning that love came in many forms and that families were built not just through biology but through daily acts of care and commitment. The children I work with have taught me that healing isn't about forgetting pain or pretending it didn't happen. It's about letting that pain transform into purpose. Emma Rodriguez, a 7-year-old cancer patient, once told me that hard things make us stronger, but only if we don't let them make us mean. She was right. The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word as Simone shared her journey from brokenness to wholeness. I recently learned that my ex-husband's cruel judgment of me was based on a lie. He was the one with fertility issues, but it was easier for him to blame me than face his own inadequacy. For a moment, I felt angry about the deception, about the year I spent believing I was defective. But then I realized something important. His lie doesn't change who I've become. Simone's voice grew stronger as she approached her conclusion. I am not a mother in the traditional sense. I will never experience pregnancy or childbirth, will never see my own features reflected in a child's face. But I am surrounded by children who call my name when they're scared, who trust me with their secrets, who light up when I walk into a room. I am beloved by dozens of small people who don't share my DNA but who have claimed pieces of my heart. She gestured toward the audience, where she could see Marcus Williams sitting with Jerome and his newly returned wife. Emma Rodriguez was there with her parents, wearing a colorful headscarf and beaming up at the stage. Destiny's grandmother had brought her, the little girl waving enthusiastically when she spotted Simone at the podium. These programs we're supporting tonight don't just serve children. They create families. They connect caring adults with young people who need stability and love. They prove that sometimes the most important relationships in our lives are the ones we choose, not the ones we're born into. The applause started before she finished her last sentence, building to a standing ovation that brought tears to her eyes. As she left the stage, Simone felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with the audience's approval and everything to do with the truth she'd finally been able to speak. The reception afterward was a blur of congratulations and business cards, potential donors wanting to know more about the program she'd described. But the moment that mattered most came when a small voice called her name across the crowded room. Miss Simone. Destiny ran toward her with the fearless abandon of childhood, her dress shoes clicking against the polished floor. Behind her came Jerome with his parents, Emma with her family, and a dozen other children whose lives had intersected with hers. You were so good up there, Destiny announced, throwing her arms around Simone's waist. You talked about us. I did. Because you're the most important part of my story. As children and parents gathered around her, sharing hugs and congratulations, Simone felt the truth of her own words. This was her family, chosen and beloved, bound together not by genetics but by the daily choice to show up for each other. Marcus Williams approached with his wife Sarah, a woman whose tired eyes held the gratitude of a mother who'd been away from her child too long. Miss Simone, I can't thank you enough for what you did for Jerome while I was deployed, Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. He talks about you constantly. You helped him through the hardest time of his young life. Jerome helped me too, Simone replied, ruffling the boy's hair affectionately. All of these children did. They taught me that love doesn't have limits or requirements. It just has to be real. Later that evening, as the crowd thinned and the children went home to their beds, Simone found herself standing alone in the hotel's garden, looking up at the stars. Her phone buzzed with messages from family members who'd watched the live stream of her speech, friends from her old life who were amazed by her transformation, colleagues celebrating her courage and sharing her story. But the message that made her smile came from an unexpected source. Watched your speech online. You were right about finding your purpose. Congratulations on building something beautiful. Michelle. Even David's wife, the woman who'd gotten everything Simone once wanted, recognized the value of the life she'd built from the ashes of her broken dreams. "Quite a night," Gloria said, joining her in the garden. "The foundation raised more money tonight than they have in 5 years. Your story moved people. Good. These children deserve every opportunity we can give them. What's next for you? I have a feeling this is just the beginning." Simone considered the question, thinking of the speaking requests already coming in, the book deal a publisher had mentioned, the possibilities that seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of her. More of the same, I think. Teaching children, helping families, showing up for the people who need me. Everything else is just extra. As she drove home through the quiet city streets, Simone reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the courthouse where her marriage died to the stage where she'd shared her rebirth, from the broken woman who'd hidden from baby showers to the confident educator celebrating her chosen family. Her apartment was dark and quiet when she arrived, but it no longer felt empty. The walls were covered with children's artwork, thank you cards from grateful parents, photos of smiling faces that represented her true legacy. This was home, not the house she'd lost in the divorce, but this small space filled with evidence of love freely given and received. She thought of David, still living his lie with children who would never know their true biological origins, and felt nothing but pity for a man so afraid of his own vulnerability that he destroyed everyone who tried to love him. His betrayal had led her to this life, this purpose, this joy that felt more authentic than anything she'd experienced during their marriage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, difficult children to love, struggling families to support, her own continued growth as a woman who'd learned that sometimes the most beautiful flowers grew from the deepest soil. But tonight, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived and a purpose clearly found, Simone Thompson was exactly where she belonged.